We're out here. This is the field where the magic happens.
Benning Bites with Damon Benning. Benning Bites with Damon Benning.
It's another episode of Benning Bites. Appreciate you fine folks being a part of what we do. Great morning show. So hopefully you're a part of that on ESPN 590, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR at 9 o'clock in Lincoln. How about that? You can get us on Apple and Spotify and Facebook and all sorts of beautiful things like YouTube. We're just trying to give you the best that we have in a very topsy-turvy but exciting landscape in sports. And much like our show, it is highly, highly competitive. On the heels of a competitive, spirited effort, and Columbus, Nebraska gets ready to come home and take on UCLA, which in my opinion will be probably a little bit more accurate benchmark of why you hired someone like Coach Rhule than the immediacy of being able to win a game in Columbus against the number 2 ranked team in the country, right? Because if you knew that this was a process and it was kind of a slow burn, and as he likes to say, this is what you get with him when you kind of go through the pruning and chafing process to get to the good stuff, then you'd like to see what happens Saturday in Lincoln. He took his stand. I didn't want to make light of when I said this was kind of his Normandy moment where I think before he said what he said Saturday in Columbus, he thought about whether this was the time to go there with the topical and the 30,000-foot view. And I loved it. I mean, I had the impromptu emotional response in the post-game, the fifth quarter with Ben McLaughlin, and I said just what was in my heart, right? I'm glad he's ours. That was something that I think his team needed to hear. I think it was something that the fan base needed to hear. And I didn't parse through not drilling down into the micro or, screens versus muffed punts versus any. I thought that was a time where everybody kind of questioned Nebraska's fortitude and, were they relenting to the negativity that can sometimes surround the program and being in the pressure cooker and all of that. Because let's not act like we weren't saying that. We were. Oh, I don't know where they are emotionally and this, that, and the other. And some of it was warranted, right, for the response that they had in Bloomington. But he put it out there. And at that moment, especially when he said, if you love coaching and you love young people. And I just love the fact because I think he coaches like parenting. And there are things that you want to instill and that you want takeaways from, and you want them to be better than you, and they're not always going to make great decisions, but you want to allow room for growth and a little grace. And I think that's like being the CEO of this program, where those kinds of things have to happen. And then you have to occasionally make tough decisions where you're actually pitting the outcome versus the process and where you are weighing it real time and making decisions going forward. Same as parenting when you're setting bedtimes or doling out punishment, but not wanting to kill growth and allowing for opportunity to fail without putting them in harm's way. Like there's just the parallels are easy to see, at least for me, which spurred the thought. I'm glad he's ours, and I'm glad that he's at my alma mater, and I'm glad that he has a chance to impact my son on that level, because I think it's important. Because I've said for a handful of years, while Nebraska can always upgrade in talent in some key spots, what we were seeing unfold, and by and large, wasn't always a talent issue. And even on Saturday, I didn't find myself saying, man, if we only had better players. And I knew Ohio State was one of the most talented teams in the country. But at that particular juncture, watching that game unfold, I don't remember me ever saying to myself, well, they're just too good, or they have too many good players. I think I can say that without saying that Nebraska is a finished or completed project on where they're going to be talent-wise. And so it's games like this where I think you hired Coach Rhule. And he told you, we'll see how we handle much like you had to see how you handled what happened in Bloomington to see how it panned out in Columbus. You have to see how Columbus pans out to what's happening or transpires and helps in the outcome of what's happening in Lincoln. And I think you're getting a team in UCLA coming into town that is talented in some spots. They're a little more one-dimensional than Nebraska is used to the last handful of weeks. I think they will come in and try to throw the ball around the yard, but they're feeling a lot better about where they are at this stage of the season in their program than I think people would have thought. And Nebraska is going to have to recalibrate and figure out, okay, how do we take what we learned here? And we talked about championship mindset and only seeing it in small doses. How can we grow and manifest it into every day? We heard the brilliance of MJ Sherman and his little snippet where you have your come to truth Monday and then your bloody Tuesday, and he's basically going back to say, okay, we're trying to wash, rinse, repeat as we grow and get our clothes cleaned and spend a lot less time on the agitated cycle. That would be my suggestion for everybody. Let's spend a lot less time on the agitated cycle. You saw a coach that easily could have spent time complaining about officiating real time in that game, and he took that opportunity to hammer home the growth and development and caring for young people and wanting the best for them. Color me moved. Even yesterday with the announcement that came out. Do you see how he just seamlessly moved through it? He gave grace. Hey, officiating's tough. There's a lot on their plate. There's a lot of knee-jerk things. It's always teachable moments, and sometimes I know people want to eye roll, but for me, you can't spend time on what isn't. You got to focus on what is. And that's my biggest takeaway in terms of the growth of the program and what he's trying to instill in young people, because it's what I'd want in myself. That's another episode of Benning Bites.
A Hurrdat Sports Network production.